Sally, you've been in letting agency for over 20 years. You've been ALA president. What's the best and worst things that you've seen change in the UK lettings agency industry for letting agents?
I think when I first started, Chris, it was 1998. I first got into letting agency, but I started trading in 2000.
You must have been at primary school.
Let's start again. When did I start trading? 1990. Right.
Go on.
So when I first started trading, Chris, it was 1990, so the world was very different. I mean, really, to set up as a letting agent, all you needed was a pen and a piece of paper, and we didn't even do to-let boards. Can you believe we didn't do to-let boards? There, estate agents did for sale boards, but letting agents, it was not normal to do to-let boards, so it was really easy to start out. Since then, the industry has been through so many changes. There's been good, there's been bad, there's been everything. I think the biggest challenge for letting agents nationwide has been the legislation changes. You know, we're now at something like 170 pieces of legislation right now that we have to abide by, and I think that's one of the biggest challenges, but I also think it gives us the biggest opportunity, and I think that's the big thing that letting agents really need to catch on to now, that's why landlords need us.
I mean, my understanding is just over half of landlords don't use a letting agent. Why do you think that is?
I think it's because they believe they don't need a letting agent. They have Google, they have access to the internet, they have access to resources, and they believe that they can get the information they need and they can run their properties quite safely themselves. And in the majority of cases, they probably can, but you know as well as I do that it is such a complex field with minutiae detail that, you know, nowadays the slightest little thing is go to jail, criminal sentence, massive fines. There's some real serious pieces of legislation that are coming out that I think a lot of landlords are not aware of. And I run a lot of landlord seminars and talking to landlords directly. They just aren't aware of the changes that are happening now. For example, the fact that councils are now levying fines, instant fixed fines, and they can keep those fines. And that came in April 2017. And I think that's one of the biggest changes that is going on in our industry, that the councils can now keep the fines. Because you think about it, a couple of years ago, a council could spend thousands of pounds prosecuting a landlord for some misdemeanour, and at the end of it, when they got a £20,000-30,000 award, they didn't get to keep the money. So from the council's perspective, why do it? Now they can keep the money, and we can see councils across the country scaling up their staffing team so that they can start to prosecute and take action against landlords. And we are talking criminal offences, we're talking fines, banning orders now as well, of course, for landlords, repayment of rent back to the tenants. There is so many risks landlords take which just weren't there 5 to 10 years ago. So if you look at 5 to 10 years ago, it was quite easy to be a self-managing landlord. Now I would say it's impossible. Unless you are full-time, keeping yourself educated of all the Deregulation Act, the Immigration Act, the changes that are coming into play, it's really not safe to do it yourself.
Maybe in the next video we could talk about how letting agents can use these legislation changes to get more business. Absolutely,
and I think it's key, because if you think about why a landlord should use a letting agent, it is because the letting agent knows all the legislations and how to keep the landlord safe. That is what a landlord goes to a letting agency for. However, it's interesting that so many letting agents don't utilise that.
Well, let's talk about that in the next video.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.